Welcome to Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers, a once-a-week show covering all things Buffalo Sabres and NHL hockey. We thank you for joining us today, and to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes, be sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and catch the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed. You can find us at Sabres Scoop, THW, and everything else at The Hockey Writer. And make sure you head over to morningskate.io to sign up for our daily Morning Skate newsletter so you don't miss out on the latest and weirdest hockey news every day. Brandon, we got another guest to announce.
Yeah, you could be talking to the other guest because his name too is Brandon. So our guest today is Brandon Stanley, a Carolina Hurricanes writer for the Hockey Writers, who's here to talk Stanley Cup playoffs. And although if I had to guess, there might still be a bit of raw emotion from the end of a hard-fought series against the Lightning. I think we're gonna have some great conversations. But before we head into that, let's just see what's going on in Buffalo with the Sabres, because although there isn't a ton of news about this team right now, there are some notable things that I would like to cover at the start of the show. So, with that being said, let's hop right into this. Three Sabres took home medals in the World Championships that just concluded. Of course, Canada winning that one. And Colin Miller, none other than Colin Miller, the Buffalo Sabres defenseman, was on Team Canada that won the gold medal. R2 Ruotsalainen, whose jersey is hanging behind our esteemed guest, Jordan Jacklin, right now. He's got the Ruotsalainen jersey, so he took home silver with Finland, and Tage Thompson took home the bronze with the United States. Any thoughts on, just how the Sabres performed in the World Championships? Jordan, if you want to pitch in anything. I know Ruotsalainen actually had quite a good showing at the World Championships.
He really did. He had a two-goal game, including the shootout winner in one of the games there. He had such great chemistry with Florida Panthers prospect Anton Lundell. I really liked his play there. And the interesting thing to me is the other two players, because Colin Miller and Tage Thompson potentially are going to be left unprotected in the Seattle expansion draft. So you know that Kraken are looking at their performances, and they were definitely watching them to see if. Because I think one of those guys could easily be taken. Colin Miller's a guy who I think honestly you saw him go to Vegas and find instant success there. I wouldn't be surprised if the Kraken, even with his cap hit, take a chance on him. I like the showing for all three of those players.
Yeah, totally. And I'm just curious, Brandon, were there any players? I don't know if you follow the World Championships much because you obviously had more important games to worry about. But were there any players or anything in particular that stood out from you? If you do have anything to add about these
Man,
this year.
um, I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Like I feel like I kept seeing somebody on Twitter. They were talking about Hurricanes prospect, but I think Jack Drury maybe Team USA.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds
yeah,
right.
that's who it is. I'm pretty sure. But like you said, I like have literally paid no attention to the World Championships. Like you guys like started talking about it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's going on right now. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Drury got in there. And he's a pretty we actually did our on my podcast we did a top prospects ranking. We did our top tens, and I had him as the Hurricanes #3 prospect, which the other two guys I was doing it with thought that was a little bit high, but he's a really good player. He's almost like a Jordan Stahl light, like a two-way player that's like really good in both ends, and it's a guy I'm excited about. And I mean, he's only 19 or 20 now, so getting a chance to, even at the World Championships, obviously the NHL is still going on, so it's not like super high-end talent out there, but getting a chance to go play for Team USA is a pretty big deal for a young kid like that. So it was pretty cool.
Totally. Maybe he'll be the prospects sent in a potential Jack Eichel trade. Who knows?
Hey, absolutely.
We got to get into that because Elliot Friedman dropping a bomb today as he joined WGR to talk with Andrew Peters and Craig Rivett about a ton of Sabres stuff. So this is what he had to say. At the end of the day, I don't think the Sabres want to bring Jack Eichel back. They want to move on. And, people are saying this to Kevin Adams. You got to trade Eichel, trade him now. Adams is saying not so fast and wants to create a trade market for him. Probably the smarter move. You shouldn't be instantly trading your franchise centerman, but that's just me. Friedman also said that multiple teams have shown interest in acquiring Sam Reinhart. Why wouldn't you? You take that player any day of the week. This is the question that I'm just curious, guys. What do you think of these comments? Let's just break it down first because it's quite interesting to me that Buffalo doesn't want to bring him back. I know the agent could be spinning it off this way. What do you think there, Brandon?
Yeah, I've been pretty stubborn about not writing anything about Jack Eichel trade rumors or not anything humoring them at least, because I all along up until now, pretty much up until Elliot Friedman's comments, I thought, oh, this is just ridiculous. This is not going to happen. He has, more than half of his contract left. He's, the star center. Like, he's going to be here until the contract runs out or even longer. And then from Friedman's comments, like, this is not a guy who makes things up. This is not a guy who lies. Okay. As far as anybody in the media goes, he's very well respected as an insider. And you got to believe that there's some truth to this. And if he says that, the disconnect is as far as the Sabres don't want Jack Eichel back next season, you got to think it's almost said and done. And it really, really upsets me to see. I don't know what else to make of the comments, but yeah, it was quite a bomb, like you said. And so I'm not sure, from an outsider's perspective, Brandon, you have anything to add? Just, does it make you a little bit more excited than sad like we are, or what's going on there?
I actually feel a lot of sympathy. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between the current Sabres situation and what the Hurricanes went through for a decade, where they didn't make the playoffs once and were just irrelevant. I mean, and the Sabres are like a much bigger market, and it's kind of hard for them to totally be irrelevant like we were. Like, nobody talked about us at all. And the team was really, really bad. And I mean, the fans didn't even want to come see them play anymore. So, I mean, it just makes me sad to see this unfold. And obviously you got Jeff Skinner up there, who at one time was the Hurricanes' future. When he broke into the league with like 32 goals, won the Calder Trophy, and just looked like a star in the making. He was just about every Hurricanes fan's favorite player. He was just this fun kid to watch, always seemed to have a smile on his face. And seeing the way his career has taken a downturn and he's, just turned into a not very valuable player anymore, it's just sad to watch, like I said, all around. I mean, I just have a lot of sympathy for Buffalo. That's the truth.
Well, the fans aren't even watching Buffalo games anymore. They dropped out of the top 3 in local TV ratings, like, for the first time ever. We brought that up a couple of weeks ago. Like,
wow.
I don't even know how many fans will be in the arena next year, if I'm being honest with you.
It's rough, man. And I mean, another Hurricanes connection, man. Kevin Adams, Hurricanes legend, played on the fourth line here. Was a really good player for a long time. I'm pretty sure he was on the 06 team that won the Stanley Cup. Yeah, he was.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's a good hockey mind. Like, I have hope for him. I'm definitely pulling for him. Like I said, as a Hurricanes fan and growing up around here. So hopefully he's the guy. Maybe he'll take some pointers from his boy, Brendan Moore. I know head coach and general manager aren't exactly the same thing, but maybe we'll see lots of that 06 Hurricanes team starting to make big waves with different franchises.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the other thing that Friedman mentioned was that multiple teams have shown interest in Sam Reinhart. So I guess I'm going to pose a question here. If the Sabres lose either one of Eichel or Reinhart or both, which is, it's in the realm of possibility right now that they are without Eichel and Reinhart. They're 1 and 2 center, or, top center wing, whatever they play them as. If they are without one or both of those players, what are our expectations on the returns? I assume they go in separate deals. I assume Eichel would be one deal, Reinhart would be another deal. There's no way I see them going in a package. That would just be too massive for one team. And what are the expectations for the Sabres for next season and beyond? Let's go to you, Jordan.
Well, you have to hope you're getting 2 first-round picks at least back, and if you're trading both of them, so that's a start. With Eichel, there's the possibility that Quinton Byfield, maybe an Alexi Lafreniere type prospect, comes back in return. I know Rangers fans really want to give Capo Caco back in a potential trade. I don't really think I want. I know he did make great strides towards. I know this is not his baseline stats, but analytically, especially defensively, he's become a great player. But I mean, this is Jack Eichel we're talking about, right? A potential top 5 centerman in his peak, I believe. And you're selling low on both of these players, so I really hope they need to figure out a way to keep these guys to stay, because I think the trade return is going to look, I think it will look even worse than the Ryan O'Reilly trade. That's my take there.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
Yeah. Brandon, we're going to get to a potential Canes Sabres trade later in the show, but let's just hear it. Like, let's say just, general market value. What do you think Eichel or Reinhart goes for?
On my podcast, we've actually discussed trade proposals for both these guys. For Reinhart, it was actually at the trade deadline. We were just like, he's a pending RFA. This is the guy that you probably could pry out of Buffalo, but you might have to pay a premium to do it. So Reinhart's a really good top six, maybe not on a contender top line player, but he can score it. He's been scoring at just under a point per game pace, hasn't he? Even in Buffalo, which isn't exactly an offensive hotbed.
He scored at a 37 goal pace this past season.
Right.
Jack Eichel. I played
really, really good player. Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be top prospects. It's going to be probably a first round pick. I don't know if you get a roster player also for Reinhart, and I'm not really sure that that's what the Sabres are going to be looking for. If they're looking to trade Eichel and Reinhart, they're not planning on winning anytime soon. It's just the way it is. Even with that first overall pick, I would love to see an Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin pairing down the line, but sorry, I'm getting off topic here. But I mean, for Eichel, like you said, we'll get into what I think it would take from the Hurricanes later on, but it's going to start with a good young roster player. And I think it'll probably take 2 firsts alongside that and probably another like good prospect down the line. So something around that range of a good young roster player, 2 first-round picks, and probably a decent prospect on top of it. It's going to take a lot to get Eichel, and he'll have the market for him too eventually.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. It totally boggles my mind when I see people throwing out these low ball trade scenarios. And I'm just like, we're talking about Jack Eichel. I understand he plays for the Sabres, but come on, right?
Well, every player for your own team that you pull for is inherently more valuable than every other team's players. That's just
right.
That's how it works.
That's the way it goes. All right. Well, yeah, like I said, we're going to get into some Canes stuff. Let's reset the show first. You're watching Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and catch all the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed. Jordan, would you kindly kick off the Carolina Hurricanes news that we have?
Well, we talked about all the depressing Sabres news, so we got to get into some depressing Carolina Hurricanes news. As the Canes lose 4-1 in their series against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Pretty sad to see. I was rooting for the Canes, but despite losing in those 5 games, the Canes actually played pretty well in this series and were only outscored by a score of 14-9. Brandon, what were your thoughts? Because especially in those first 2 games, it was quite interesting there. They looked like the better team for a majority of those games, but they couldn't score, and then Tampa was able to find the groove.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of doing up an article right now on the Hockey Writers. And that's a lot of what I talk about is like, despite it's a 5-game series getting bounced in the second round, like there's a lot to feel good about for this franchise right now, obviously. And I do think they played Tampa Bay pretty evenly. As a matter of fact, according to Natural Stat Trick, the expected goals was 51 to 49%. Expected goals percentage. I'm sorry, I can't talk. 51% to 49%. I think it was like 9.4 to 9.1 or something like that. I mean, it was super close, about as even as it gets. But you got to factor in Andrei Vasilevsky, and both Hurricanes goalies that played had some shaky moments, and that's just a huge advantage right there alone. And to me, the biggest thing is like so much in the postseason is about things breaking right. Getting bounces, injury luck, stuff like that. And the Hurricanes didn't get either of those things. Losing both Nino Niederreiter and Vincent Trocheck, 2 of your top 3 leading goal scorers, is just that's too much to overcome against a team like Tampa Bay. And I think, lastly, it was a learning experience for the Canes. And I know they've been here 3 years in a row now, so that might seem kind of funny, but like they're not used to being a real contender, a team that people have expectations for. And I think, especially in game 4, when they got that 4-2 lead, you really saw their youth and inexperience, because they started running around. They were super out of position. And then they started chasing Tampa Bay, who is always poised, who is a champion, who's been here before. And suddenly you're taking penalties and giving up odd man rushes. And I mean, it's just a death sentence. And I kind of knew at that moment, when Tampa Bay came out of that period, that the Hurricanes scored 4 times on Andrei Vasilevsky. When Tampa Bay came out of that period leading 5-4, I was like, that's probably the nail in the coffin right there. Because
totally.
They'll get there. There's still a lot of youth on that team. Svechnikov's 21. Aho's only 23, even though he feels like he's been around a while now. Martin Necas is only 22. They've got a ways to go, but overall, I was pretty impressed with the Hurricanes' battle level, and I think they're right there. They just got to take that next step.
Totally, yeah. And you mentioned goaltending in this series, and like we said, only outscored 14-9. So one of the brightest spots for the Canes, I think, was rookie goalie Alex Nedelkovic, of course, named one of the 3 nominees for the Calder Trophy. And one, to do that as a goalie, to be a Calder a finalist, that's an achievement in and of itself. And 2, this is a guy who was put on waivers earlier this season. Okay. And there were a lot of Sabres fans saying, snatch this guy up. Didn't happen. And look what he went on to do. So talk a little bit about him. He really had some bright moments in these playoffs, even though they obviously came out, on the bottom of this. But talk a little bit about him as a goalie.
Yeah, I mean, so Ned's been in the system for a while. I think he was a 2014 second round pick. And great junior career, great international career in the World Juniors and stuff with Team USA. He had some riveting performances back then. And he's always been that super high upside guy that just like he never had the consistency and he never really put it together. You look at his AHL numbers and you're like, that doesn't look like a very, very, an elite starting goaltender in the NHL to me. Excuse me. Okay. But yeah, I mean, he carried the Charlotte Checkers, the former affiliate of the Hurricanes of the AHL, to the Calder Trophy 2 years ago. And, he was just so up and down. It's like one year he looks like this star, the Hurricanes goalie of the future, and the next he doesn't. And, like you said, he got waived this year and nobody even wanted him. Unclaimed by every team. Could have had him for free. And, it's just the way it's why it's hockey, right? And especially goalie development just seems so random. Like you think you have this elite goalie prospect and he never pans out, or you have a guy like Nedelkovic that you are kind of questioning, and all of a sudden he comes in and turns in a 930 save percentage and carries your team to the playoffs. And he was fantastic in the playoffs too. He allowed that one rough goal in game 1 to Barclay Goodrow, where he was trying to slide over and hug the short side post. He missed the post with his pad. He got off balance and let in a real soft goal that ended up being the game winner. And then he gets benched for Mrazek, who has a great first game and struggles mightily in the second game, which I never understood, not going back to Nedelkovic for the second game. Mrazek started anyway. But that was the game that the Hurricanes couldn't get a save in and blew that 4-2 lead. And that's kind of what Hurricanes fans right now are asking, like, what could have been if Ned had started that game? How would things maybe shaken out differently? Because Mrazek did let in a couple that weren't real great that game. But yeah, I mean, it's been a revelation. And the Hurricanes have always, like, that's been their biggest question, really, for what feels like forever, is their net. Cam Ward was – he won the Stanley Cup here, obviously, in his first year, and then never really recaptured that magic again. And the Hurricanes committed to him and kept him around until like Scott Darling, which was an unmitigated disaster. And that's definitely one of the biggest reasons Hurricanes fans are like really excited right now, is because they do seem like they finally have their answer in that. And obviously he earned that distinction with his play this year.
Pretty crazy to think too, like goalies like Aaron Dell and Anton Forsberg claimed on waivers, and Forsberg was claimed multiple times, by the way, or trades. Just tons of player movement there revolving around him and Nedelkovic. He does have this pedigree, and coming into the season, I definitely saw like this was like do or die for him. He probably wouldn't be a Kane had he not made the NHL this season. Like he probably would have been gone this offseason. It's quite amazing to see. And I mean, I honestly didn't even know if he was going to get that Calder nomination, just because he was very underrated this season. But it's nice to see the voters really, the general managers vote on that awards, I believe. So it's really nice to see them show him the praise. I think he can be the starting goaltender there. You got to hope, because this Canes team is very close. And ultimately, man, we got to talk about this. What was the deciding factor or factors in this series that led to a Canes loss and a Bolts victory, in your opinion, Brandon?
Well, if it's not Andrei Vasilevsky, which is probably the easy answer, it's special teams, man. The Hurricanes are the number 2 power play in the NHL in the regular season, and it had its moments, and it did score a couple of goals in the series. But we saw Tampa Bay's power play. It's like taking any penalties against them it's a death sentence, because they were at like 50%. Like I'm pretty sure they were pretty close to 50% in the series. And it was like every time the Hurricanes seemed to grab a little momentum, they seemed to take an undisciplined bad penalty. Svechnikov did it a couple of times. And even though the Hurricanes kill is very good as well, I mean, just so much talent on that $100 million power play. I'm just kidding. We're not going to go there. I promise. I cannot clear my throat right now. I'm so sorry. But I mean, it's definitely those two things were the biggest ones for me. Were the difference in the series was Andrei Vasilevsky just having a phenomenal series and playing at the top of his game, which even the bottom of his game is still as good as any goalie in the world. So when he's on like that, they're tough to beat as it is. And when their power play is clicking on top of that, they're just a tough team to beat.
Totally. Yeah. So here's a loaded question because there's a lot that goes into this and there's a couple parts to break down here. Where do you think that the Canes stand in terms of heading into the offseason, the expansion draft, the entry draft coming up? What kind of team is this going to be when all those things are in the past and next season rolls around?
Man, that article I mentioned I'm writing right now, it actually kind of dives into this just a little bit. And I really think this is going to be a defining offseason for the Don Waddell regime because a lot of their depth forwards are free agents. And I think they need to be looking to upgrade that. But they also have Alexander Simmons buyout coming off the books. They have about $2 million. Yeah, they had that contract. They have about $2 million coming off the books elsewhere from like Patrick Marleau's contract. Alex Galchenyuk, when they traded him to the Leafs, they retained a little salary there. And there's a couple other players that I can't think of off the top of my mind. But they're getting some money freed up. But they also have Dougie Hamilton is an unrestricted free agent. Andrei Svechnikov is going to get a pretty substantial raise, even though he's probably getting a bridge deal as an RFA. And then I think they need to look to improve at least their top nine. I think it's time for them to get aggressive. It's time for them they still have a really deep prospect pool as well. So it's time to start dipping into that a little bit and maybe try to push for like a big time roster player, like maybe some of the guys we'll talk about later. I don't know. But Eichel's contract, we don't have that much cap room. So I don't know how easy that would be to fit in without a pretty good chunk of change going back the other way, which Buffalo could take. I don't know. There's a lot of things up in the air, and it's tough to say exactly what's going to happen. All I know is I'm going to be watching like a hawk to see exactly how Waddell navigates it because there's a lot up in the air, and a lot of the roster could look very, very different next year. Other than your like core pieces, Aho, Teravainen, and Svechnikov up top, those guys are all pretty much locked in long term. But the rest of the roster could change a whole lot.
Yeah, I actually had this wasn't in our topic sheet, but now that I think of it, because we talked about who might be exposed to Seattle in the expansion draft. Let's put the same question to the Hurricanes. Is there anybody do you have a sort of a rough idea of who you think might be available to take or you'd like to see gone?
There's a lot of speculation that it could be Jake Bean because on the back end, you're probably going to protect Slavin and Pesci for sure. Mm-hmm. And there's a good chance Brady Shea, who really, really turned it on in his second year with the team, first full year with the team. Like the second half of this season, Brady Shea was like the player we hoped to be getting when we acquired him. Like stellar defensively, he wasn't chipping in much offense like he kind of did in New York, but he really turned into like that second left-handed defenseman behind Slavin on like big tough minutes and on the penalty kill. And there was a time when people thought he was going to be the one that was going to be exposed and probably a good target for Seattle. But and this is why I'm saying all this, but because of his play this year, he's really taken himself out of that consideration. So it's probably going to be Jake Bean. If you re-sign a guy like maybe Warren Fogle, there's options, but the Hurricanes aren't really going to have anybody likely to be exposed that they're really that worried about losing. Honestly, they're in a pretty good spot.
That's a good spot to be in.
Yeah.
Carolina's offseason is very interesting to me. Like, what are the odds that Dougie Hamilton comes back to you? Because there's been so much rumors around this guy for the past few years, even dating back to Calgary. It does seem like he's not going to be a Carolina Hurricane anymore. I know the Leafs fans believe like a Morgan Riley for Dougie Hamilton swap's possible. I don't know if you've heard of that one. There's this crazy. Do you think Dougie Hamilton's back next year?
The Dougie Hamilton discourse is just exhausting at this point. Everybody has an opinion about him. I think he ends up back in Carolina. He's too vital to what they do. He loves it here. That's another big part of it because he has kind of in the past struggled to, I don't want to say fit in, but like, I mean, you guys, I'm sure have seen the stories and people talking about, he's just not a good fit in the locker room and stuff because he doesn't want to go out drinking with the boys. He wants to go to a museum, stuff like that. The fan base loves him. His teammates love him. You know, we see all kinds of videos of him. He's super tight with Andrei Svechnikov, which may or may not affect negotiation, like the Hurricane side of things. It's like you might want to keep that kid happy. If it were me, I would. I've heard that term is more important to him than dollar figure. And I think the Hurricanes would be willing to go 7.5, maybe not quite 7.5. I think they're going to be looking at about $7 million a year for Dougie. And I think they'll be able to get a deal done.
Yeah, in my opinion, he's a top 10 defender in the National Hockey League, at least this past season. I mean, he's really turned it on, raised a step in his game. He's a number one defenseman. I don't necessarily know how he's going to play moving forward. I think he still will likely be able to play that play style that he does. But I've even seen trade rumors regarding Andrei Svechnikov. Now, I know that's just like crazy fans. I know that there's no way they would actually do that because, hey, if you're trading Jack Eichel, I would love a Svechnikov back. But, I'm just curious there. Like, have you seen those rumors? What do you think of the crazy? Why are people turning on this guy?
Because he threw a couple of bad penalties in the playoffs, and every fan base has those fans that just too high and too low, which I get it. I've been like that in the past too. My passion has gotten the best of me at times myself. I'll freely admit that. But Andrei Svechnikov's not going anywhere, man. And every player is going to go through ups and downs. The kid's 21 years old. And like last year, he was 19 for most of the season. He was on an over 30 goal pace and at nearly a point per game. I actually, and I'm going to go back to, I promise this is the last time I'll go back to this post that I'm writing right now. But I talked about him in it, and I compared his first 3 seasons to that of Nathan MacKinnon because I see a lot of similarities, maybe not so much play style, but just their first few years in the league, they were kind of up and down and showed flashes of absolute brilliance. And it actually took until year 5 for MacKinnon to really turn into like the top 5 player in the NHL he is now. And I absolutely see Svechnikov carrying on that same kind of trajectory. He definitely had his struggles this year. He definitely had a lot long stretches of games actually where he was really fighting the puck. But I think he's probably the most raw, talented hockey player the Hurricanes franchise has ever seen. That's just me. Just in terms of raw physical tools, I mean, Skinner, Stahl, those guys just don't really add up to the potential that Andrei Svechnikov has.
No, I really agree with you there. And looking back at that 2018 draft, there's still another gear that both Rasmus Dahlin for the Sabres and Svechnikov for Carolina can go.
Absolutely.
And, this is going to be interesting to see how their careers turn out. It's going to be interesting off seasons ahead for both teams because Jack Eichel, we're finally going to get into this. We know he's getting traded. He's not coming back. Elliot Friedman saying it's over. He could be a player that the Canes could look to acquire, and why not? Imagine a Sebastian Aho, Jack Eichel center core. You really can't get better than that. And do you think that this is a possibility, and what would you need to give up?
I would love to see it. I think it would be an absolute blast to watch. Obviously, Jack Eichel is like a legitimate 1C. I don't even know who would be your 1C, Eichel or Aho. But to actually get a deal done, man, there's no way Buffalo doesn't at least start with Martin Necas. That's just the good young roster player. And Necas has a ton of potential himself. He really stepped up this year and turned into a legitimate force. He's got as much speed as anybody in the league. So much fun to watch him turn on the Jets and just blow through a defense. Incredible hands, great vision, just a really, really good offensive player. So I think you start with him. 2 first-round picks. That's what I said earlier. I think you're getting this year's pick first and next year's. And then, hey, we talked about Jack Drury earlier. It's a perfect guy to go to. A good, solid prospect on top of all that. I think that's a pretty good starting point because you have a potential 1C in Martin Necas coming back the other way, and then you're still getting 2 first-round picks and a legitimate prospect that probably is going to slide into a third-line center role and do it very, very well in the near future. Jack Drury was really, really good in Sweden last year playing against men. one of the best leagues in the world, and he won the Rookie of the Year over there. So I think that'd be a pretty good haul. Like I said, I'm a Hurricanes writer. I grew up here in Raleigh. So I said this earlier. I know we all value our own players more than they're inherently more valuable than other teams. So tell me if I'm off base, but I think that'd be a pretty good starting point.
I'll tell you this, Brandon, if they get that type of return, I'll be shocked. I'm expecting even a lower return. Like, I don't
really
know if I expect Natchez and 2 first-round picks in return. Do you, Brandon? Sorry, other Brandon? My co-host Brandon?
Very confusing.
Am I other Brandon now?
I honestly don't think they're going to get that type of return for Jack Eichel. I just don't.
Well, here's the thing. They should. But I think it's a problem of their own making that they're not going to. And it's entirely their fault, just like every other shortcoming of this organization, this front office, this management. And they dug themselves a grave, and they've got to lay in it with whatever they get back for Eichel, which is not going to be enough. I mean, even with a very, generous return, like was just described to us potentially from the Hurricanes. Like I said, I don't think they're going to get that. And I think you're going to lose a Jack Eichel trade. And very likely, I think you're going to lose a Sam Reinhart trade too while we're at it. So that's just where they're at. But let's see if Adams can do something. I've liked what he said. He's just got to turn those words into actions and really back them up somehow.
Well, it's like you said, though, like he just needs to be patient with it. You have quite the chip on your hands right now. Let teams start bidding for it. Let them outbid each other and drive that price up. I think you could very easily, if you play your cards right, get a return like that for Jack Eichel. He's worth it. He's the kind of player that can make a gigantic difference for your franchise.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't go the way the Taylor Hall sweepstakes went there, getting that type of return. But hopefully, this will be the true testament to see if Kevin Adams has learned from that, if Jason Carmanos is maybe more of an influence than we see. Maybe we see a president of hockey operations brought in before this trade. Who knows? Lots of things could happen here. Lots of things at play for this organization.
Totally. Yep. And hey, there's some cooler things going on in the NHL in general right now than there is to talk about, teams that are out of the playoffs. But hey, let's talk like the remaining teams in the playoffs right now. So there's only one more game to be played in the second round of the playoffs right now, and it's being played as we speak. Actually, it's between Colorado and Vegas. Game 6. Vegas is up 3-2 on Colorado, and for a team like Colorado who really was cruising up until they met Vegas, it's looking like a do or die situation for them. So by the time our fans are listening to this series could be over or it could be going to Game 7. So let's check in on that and the other series. And just to update you here before we all give our opinions, Montreal eliminated Winnipeg in a 4-0 sweep since the last time we talked, and the Islanders eliminated the Bruins in 6 games. Jordan, I'm gonna throw it to you.
Alrighty, yeah, let's start with Montreal here. Like, they're the Kings of the North, this is going to be a true testament to see if the North Division was a complete crapshoot or if they can actually, maybe prove they're not awful. Because lots of people I'm seeing making bets that the Habs are going to get swept here. I don't think they will, especially if it's Vegas. Like, I think they're going to match up a lot better with Vegas. That's a team they could shut down. And I think Carey Price, as long as nobody like Chris Kreider runs into him, I'm sure he's going to play the whole series. And I think he could steal some games here. And we're seeing Cole Caulfield really light it up with his assisting, his playmaking ability. Sorry, he hasn't even scored a goal yet. And Nick Suzuki, Jesperi Kotkaniemi looking amazing here. They're getting depth scoring. Tyler Toffoli, the best value signing of last offseason. I think Montreal will at least make it look somewhat decent, but ultimately it's pretty tough to say that when Colorado or Vegas don't win that. And regarding the other one, we're getting a Tampa New York Islanders rematch of last year. It's going to be interesting because that Islanders team made it so difficult for Tampa to get to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. I say that goes to 7 games, and I will say Tampa prevails in Game 7 overtime in that series. I think that's going to go right down to the wire. People are going to think the Islanders are going to win it. I think Tampa will just prevail because they're a different team this year. They got $96 million worth of players on the roster.
You said it,
right? But I think the Islanders are going to make it very difficult for them.
Yeah, man. And this is kind of something I alluded to earlier as well. It's so much in the playoffs is about who's hot at the right time, who has things breaking the right way for them. Nobody saw Montreal going this far. Like, it was just totally unexpected. Everybody expected the Leafs to come out of the North. The Leafs of all people. What were we thinking? Anyway. But Carey Price has just been on another level. Same goes for Semyon Varlamov. Like I know the Islanders system kind of has a lot to do with that. Just the way they play, they clog the middle. They make it so hard to generate anything with speed through the middle of the ice. But this just shows how much I know, because pretty much all these series are not going the way I expected them to. In Colorado, man, I mean, I was just like, nobody's stopping that team. Just the way they looked, like I thought they were just going to take the entire thing. I'm extremely impressed with Vegas, who at one point not too long ago I was kind of unimpressed with, and now all of a sudden you've seen why everybody talks about them the way they do. Max Pacioretty, Mark Stone, those guys are just showing they're big game performers. As far as what was the other series I'm forgetting?
The Islanders Boston.
I guess I already kind of talked about this. Okay. Well, yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
That might have been it, actually. I don't know.
I don't even know anymore. I mean, it's winding down here, so I guess it'll be easier to talk about these series now that there's only going to really be 2 left. So hopefully we don't have too many of those. I guess it's just a late night here.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in such a daze still because the Hurricanes just lost and I just don't have any idea what's going on.
Well, obviously, guys, we want to see a Montreal, New York Islanders Stanley Cup final, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what we're
I'm
all
sure
that'll
be super entertaining.
It's funny because the Islanders lead the playoffs in goals scored. In goals for at the moment. They have 43 goals, and that leads the whole league.
Wow.
Who would have expected that if at the beginning of the playoffs?
Yeah, no shot.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, well, I hope it turns out to be good. They're not called conference finals. What are they called? Stanley Cup semifinals.
Stanley Cup semis.
Yeah. Yep. I hope the semis are going to be good, and I hope the Cup finals a good matchup, nice and entertaining. Because I have not watched entertaining hockey all regular season, and I've been enjoying the playoffs. It's been great.
A battle of like who can out depress the other, right? Between the Canes. I mean, I don't think Canes fans should be that depressed. You have a really good team. You're the definition of stand pat, because your core is just going to get better. They're going to mature. They're going to continue to tweak with the parts. And like you said, like the playoffs literally are just one bounce away. For Leafs, it literally could have just been one bounce away from them going to the second round. They probably could be in the semifinals right now. That's why you don't overreact to stuff like this. For the Sabres, it's a little bit different because everything's just a shit show. So I don't think you're one bounce away. You're more like 20 bounces away.
A game.
Yeah, a game. Yeah, and on that lovely note, with that being said, I think it's time to wrap up the show here. So fans, we thank you for joining us. This has been Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and follow the show on Twitter at Sabres Scoop THW. And a big thank you to the other Brandon for joining the show today. It was great to talk about a team that was right in the thick of things this season, unlike our beloved Sabres. And it's always fun to get another team's perspective. And like Jordan said, bright roads ahead for the Canes. And once again, make sure you head over to morningskate.io to sign up for our daily Morning Skate newsletter so you don't miss the latest and weirdest hockey news every single day. And don't miss out on all of the great content on thehockeywriters.com. So for Brandon Stanley and Jordan, this is Brandon, and this has been Sabres Scoop. Until next time.